How you guys doing? I'm Matt Waldin, pro drifter for Mishimoto, and today we're going to be installing a set of these silicone hoses on that Miata. For the heater core lines for the 1990 and up Mazda Miata, you're going to need needle nose pliers, alignment pliers, Phillips head screwdriver, coolant, and a coolant funnel. 12 millimeter, 8 millimeter, and a ratchet. Difficulty is a 3 out of 5, and installation should take 45 minutes to an hour. Make sure you remove the negative terminal of the battery before starting any work. All right, the first order of business on the install is to jack up the car and get the coolant drained. There's a Phillips head screw. That's the drain plug for the radiator. To aid in the coolant draining, just pop off the radiator cap. She should come pouring right out like that. When you're installing the Mishimoto heater hose kit, you want to loosen the spring clamps on the heater hoses and slide them back off of the connections first. One on the back of the engine is going to be a little bit tough, but you can get in there after moving the other ones out of the way. Loosen the clamps and slide them back off of the firewall connections. And be very careful, because on 20-year-old Miatas, the heater core connections like to snap off because they're plastic. So for you Miata guys out there, just be real careful around this area. All right, use the same method of breaking these hoses free as on the heater core itself by wiggling it back and forth, and you want to pull this guy straight off from underneath of the header. After that one's off, go back to the heater core area, wiggle these loose so they're nice and loose on there, and then you should be able to pull them straight off. Just be gentle with it. In order to get to the clamp on the back of the head, you're gonna have to remove a couple things. One being the engine ground. Starting with a 12 millimeter bolt on the head itself. Unscrew that. I'll get this guy coming off here. And that's the bolt you wanna remove for the engine ground. For that stubborn one behind the engine block, bend the dipstick slightly out of the way. And get back there with a set of pliers. This is a toughie. There we go. Got that clamp out. Gonna loosen the connection up and pull it off of there. Man, these are tough. When you put these guys side by side, the Mishimoto quality is undeniable. You have rubber, which deteriorates over the time, and silicone, which does not. This also puts up with a high heat that's right next to the exhaust manifold. So on those cold winter days, these guys are gonna transfer the heat right into the cabin. This, well, it's ready to go in the trash. Before you put the hoses on, you wanna put a little grease or WD-40 inside the hose. That way you can slide it on the connections real easy on this car. You wanna use some new hose clamps on this stuff as well. These are number 6 hose clamps, and they can be found at any auto parts store. Like a glove. Look at that, like it was meant to be in there. All right, to get ourselves on that rear hose clamp, we're gonna need an 8 millimeter socket and ratchet wrench. Now, in the essence of time, since you guys don't want to see me fight this and cut my hands up, all right, well maybe you do, but we're gonna be using air here today. So, move things right along. If you don't get the hose clamp all the way situated on there, you're gonna have one hell of a coolant leak in this. So make sure that you get it right on the output on the back of the head. In fact, spend extra time on that part. All right, get your hose clamps ready on the next hose. Once the hard one's out of the way, this one should be a piece of cake for you. That goes on there like that. And the lower connection right here underneath of the exhaust manifold. Like we said earlier, just use a little care when you're tightening down on the heater core itself on the lines. And you're gonna wanna tighten up the hose clamp on the heater core connection. Make sure they're snug and they're not gonna leak. Like we said earlier, just use a little care when you're tightening down on the heater core itself on the lines. All right, last thing on the list for the heater core lines is to reattach the ground that we took off earlier. And that's gonna be the same 12 millimeter head bolt, this guy. going into the side of the head here. Reattach this ground right here. Make sure she's nice and snug. And then it's off to refilling the radiator and cooling system. All right, insert the radiator funnel and put in a 50-50 mix of antifreeze and distilled water. I like to put in a little bit of liquid chill if you want to make a little coolant salad out of it. That stuff works the best. While you're filling it, it's a good idea to pump the upper hose. That way you get any last bit of air out of the cooling system. Now that the battery's hooked up, we're ready to fire this puppy up. Make sure it's in neutral and or park before you go ahead and do so, because we're gonna leave it on the jack stands for a moment until it's completely bled out. After you got it running, turn the heat on high and wait till you have heat out in here to put the radiator cap back on. After you start the vehicle, you want to watch the temperature gauge on the dash and make sure it doesn't overheat. This concludes the installation portion of your new Mishimoto product.